guys. So, today we are going to puzzle rush as usual. I'm just getting set up on the other device, so just bear with me. Okay, that little noise. That's a Discord notification for the stream. So let's go. Pinning the queen. Mate in 3. Mate in 1. Mate in 1. Maneuver. So Queen b7 mate, bishop on h1 supports, Queen g2 mate. I don't feel like this is going to be a long session because for some reason I feel very weak in my thoughts right now. But here I think we can take the bishop. If rook b7, we play rook c7. And I think we should be pretty much winning. So here, Queen e2 mate. Queen g1, support with the bishop. Rook e1. Oh, we are receiving check from a bishop on b2, okay. Not a problem. The best defense is capture. So here bishop h4, king takes g4, rook g5 check, king h3, bishop f2 checkmate. And if bishop h4, king h2, bishop f2 checkmate. So let's go. That's all she wrote. Queen e5, king f7, queen e7, king f8, queen e5, king d8, queen e7. Knight d3 should be winning the queen, but it's a checkmate. Here it looks we can win the knight on d4. So if bishop d4, bishop a6, bishop e3, f takes e3 has to be played, b takes a6. Well, now is the time to take the queen, just so we don't lose it, and we are up a piece. Queen b8 looks like a nice first move, and then bishop e5. Hitting the queen and the rook I'm actually impressed that there's certain variety to today's puzzles. So bishop f5 and winning rook on e6. Moderate's always good for us. Rook h4, rook f to g6, check, king h3. And what else is there? Okay, yet need to be convinced. Okay, so we have two choices here. And I think if king h5, then king h7 would mean that we get checkmated next. So that gives us the idea where to go. This position, we can take the bishop, attacking the queen, or much better, we play bishop d7 check and win the queen. I think winning the queen is the most important thing here. Rook h6, mate in 1. Queen b3, and there's only two defenders, which we will be taking along the way. f3 check, g takes f3, g takes f3, king f3, e2, king e4, and promote. So it's basically about promoting all the way. Queen against rook should be winning. So this puzzle is about removing the defender of the rook on f3. So best is to do it with a check. Maybe. But it actually looks better if we take with the bishop, because the rook doesn't really have any good square and is going to be lost anyway. So this was a trap, that if we take rook takes d4, c takes d4, king takes f3, or king takes d4 and king takes f3, black would have actually some... Oh yeah, c takes d4 has to be played in case of rook takes d4. Black would have some counterplay, but to play against the rook will be like near impossible. So I think bishop takes d4, and because rook has only dark squares it can go to. What will likely happen is rook f4, bishop e3 check, rook to d4, and bishop takes d4, c takes d4, and then king f3, and we should be winning. So this was a tricky puzzle. Oh no, this is actually getting funnier. But if rook e1, then the rook on f3 is lost. As king f4, bishop e5 would win, keep the bishop as well. I need a bit of water. This is a kind of funny looking position. For some reason I feel like we want to be playing rook f1 check. Rook f1 check, but if queen d1, oops, something happened. Rook f1 check, if rook f1, queen f1, and then there's a simple checkmate. But now if rook f1, queen d1, then we have queen d3 check. King has to go to a1, and then we have queen takes d1 checkmate. So rook f1 looks like the most forcing. I need to be careful, because if I tap a different square, I'm gonna fail a puzzle. This is mate into rook f1 twice. Now this puzzle looks a bit more complicated. Does it feel like we want to play queen b7? Or is there any better move? Queen b7, bishop a4, b3. Bishop a4, and then there's queen a6. Queen b7, bishop e4, bishop b5. And then there is no way to not to lose pieces. So I think queen b7 looks like the best move. And if knight a5, there will be always bishop b5. It's actually not as simple. Queen b7, knight to a5. Bishop b5, if c6, then bishop c6, knight c6. Yeah, that's... And if bishop b5, knight d7, bishop takes d7, king d7, and then we have queen d5 check and winning the knight on a5. So I feel in all lines we are winning. So here we were saying bishop b5. Now bishop c6 is winning that extra piece. So what to do here? '28, and it's already like getting 2 or 3 slightly complicated puzzles. What's so bishop h2. Bishop h2 looks like the main candidate move here. Bishop h2, king f2, rook f5 check, king e3, rook e5 check, and then we trade the queens. We trade the rook, so we will have eventually anyway a rook and a bishop against the rook. So this should be winning. If white wants to trade, it's even better. More complications along the way. Knight e7 looks the best move, winning the rook in the corner. The g8 rook. But at the same time, we are down materials. So 97, king. I can see now what's happening. With 97, he cannot capture. So if he goes king b7, we play knight g8. They take rook g8, and then we play queen h7. And we should be guaranteed to win another piece. So let's say we will win the bishop. That should be enough advantage. They cannot take the knight because queen a8 was a checkmate, by the way. And we win that bishop, and now we have enough material to win the game, even though it's not going to be easy to prove. Mate in 2. Nice cooperation between knight, bishop, and the rook. Knight takes h6, g takes h6, queen g4 check, king h7, and one of the rooks on h6 is a checkmate, and if knight h6, king h7, for example, knight takes f7, king g8, queen h8 to mate. So not h8 did it. Now the queen on h5 looks very suspicious, and I don't see any counterplay from white if we attack the queen. There is one move that they can do, is rook e1 check. But we are up material, so I believe if we win one of the rooks, then we should be winning. It's just simple as that. So the queen is trapped now, but they are going to play rook to e4. We can play bishop e7, but then we are giving the queen some respite on h6. And if we play king d7, we are giving them queen h3 check. So by the process of elimination, best move is king d8. And now we will simply be capturing the rook on e4. That was the plan all along. Now win the queen, we are up a piece. So we had loads and loads and loads of like a slightly more difficult ones, and now we are back to mate in 1. I don't know how is that gonna be missed. This one looks like bishop h7, but is it now? Is it the move? Bishop h7, if king goes to f7, then queen h5, and king goes to e7, and then if we go queen g5, rook f6, then queen g7, rook f7, and black survives. And the last thing we want is a black survival, so we will go more precise. Queen h7, king f7, bishop g6, king e7, queen h4, g5, queen g5, checkmate. So, oh no, this is not precise. Queen h7, king f7, bishop g6, king e7, queen g7, rook f7, queen f7, checkmate. So that's the more precise way. Because in queen h4 line he still has that rook f6 defense, but here he's got nothing. So here we are going to win the rook, and then just need to maneuver the king in front of the pawn. Keep the opposition, and once the king goes to side, we will choose the other side and win. d4 check is gonna be a checkmate. d4, knight e4, bishop e4. Oh, it's not yet got. I missed rook f3, but it's just a detail. So rook e7 is not a checkmate. It's however very close to be a mate, because rook e7, king d6, knight f5, king c6, rook c7, checkmate. Queen h2. Yes, I was calculating rook takes g3 at first, but queen h2 is much more sharper. And checkmate. So first we look at queen c1, king f2, queen f1, king e3. It's not a checkmate, but I don't see a checkmate, but I see winning the queen on a7. So I will follow that, because there is no other way to access the king than this. So now we are accessing the g1 a7 diagonal, which is giving us the win. I'm scanning the board for any more possibilities, but I don't see anything better than winning the queen. Still not seeing a checkmate, so okay. Queen c6, queen c7, knight b6, king b8, queen a8. So mate in 3. Knight e7, king f8, queen d8, checkmate, knight e7, king h8, queen d8, queen f8, checkmate. So can we beat the record today? I don't know. Rook g8, queen g5, checkmate. So what do we have here? We have double check with knight e7. That means king has to move. And then we put everything we have on c8. And checkmate. So here here is a question: what do we need to do in order to win this one? So rook takes e4 looks like a first move. Then rook c7 looks like a second move. g5 would be the only defense, and then we take on e4, and I don't see much of a defense for the opponent. Queen f2, bishop g2 stops the checks. But who is stopping our queen from entering h7 or g6? I don't think anybody can stop that, so... And that is why black is sacrificing a piece. Rook c5, b c5, rook a4. I don't see anything for black. So knight on d4 is hanging. So is our bishop on c4. If this was freestyle chess, I would know what to do. I would go castle short, which would bring my rook from h1 to f1 with a check. But it's just wishful thinking, I guess. White is also threatening possibly a checkmate in one with queen f2 or queen e1. Black. Did I say white or black? I hope I said black. The material is equal, and I'm thinking the best move is to take on d5 with a check. I have bishop e6, then we take on e4 with a queen, stopping all the checkmates and attacking their queen at the same time. So it looks like the best possible move. And now, after this sequence, we are up a piece. White to move. And I kind of like this because the king e3 move was not a mistake on its own. Because if black would take on e4, we would have rook h4, a4 maneuver. But because the king is where he is, we can, with a tempo, move down. The rook needs to be protecting the, or keeping an eye on the pawn on a7. And now we simply check the king and win the rook. So we created like some sort of bridge, or whatever you would call it. So here we are going to look for some checks. Queen g6, king f2, queen g2, king e3. And maybe you can go queen e4, but I'm a little bit confused about queen g6, king f2, queen g2, king e3. Doesn't look ideal. So queen g6, king f2, rook h2. Has to go king e3. If king g3, queen h4 is a checkmate. If king e3, oh no, nonsense. Mixing up. It doesn't mean that we are messing this puzzle. No. Queen g6 is the move. King f2, rook h2. The only move is again king e3, and then queen e4 is a checkmate. So it's just me bubbling, but I wouldn't stress yet. So our queen is being attacked. We can, however, create really strong threat of checkmate on g7. The only defense will be to take back with the pawn, and after that rook g3, bishop f6 is a checkmate. So first threaten a mate, now deliver the mate. Thank you for the like. Any support, always welcome. This is mate with a pawn. We sacrifice the rook, has to be taken. Pawn moves forward. White is there. Okay, so first of all, there's no better move than promoting into queen. That we can do without a problem. Now the next moves will force white to take the knight. So queen d8 first, king f7, and then queen f8 check. And actually it's much worse than that. If we play queen d8 check, if king f7, then we have knight to g5 is a checkmate. So after queen d8, he will be taking the knight. I'm just double checking if there's anything better. I don't think so. And now we have the 8. Oh, it's b1 h7 diagonal, where we're gonna be capturing the queen. Okay, this looks checkmate-like. It's not simple. Oh, it is actually very simple. So we play queen c3 check. If king a4, queen b4 checkmate. If queen b6, then queen c7 checkmate. So give a check, that's correct. Give a mate, that's even more correct. There's a very simple mates into. So rook g7 check. King f8. Okay, it's not as simple. Also, black would like to checkmate with rook a1 check. So we need to be careful there. So how to do this without letting the king escape? rook g7, if queen g7, rook d8 is a checkmate. So that's the simple one I was talking about. But if rook g7, king f8, then we have problems. But actually, rook g7, king f8, rook g8, king e7, rook e8, king takes e8, queen g8 check, king e7, queen d8 checkmate. So rook g7 definitely works. Okay, I need a bit more drink. Pure water, Carrick-Glen, still water. At the moment I feel like 50s will not stop us today, but I cannot promise for sure, because you never know. And right now, so the first move that I would like to play is rook to e3. If bishop f1, then rook e1 check, king b2, and rook b7 is going to win us material, namely rook on a1. If rook e3, bishop g2, then maybe we can play bishop g2, rook g2, rook e1 again and win the rook in a corner. And if rook e3, rook g3, then we need to be a little bit more careful. So we go rook e1, king b2, rook b7 is winning the rook, so rook in a corner. So I think starting with rook e3 is the move, but let's go and look again at the line. Rook e3, rook g3, rook e1, king d2, because you cannot really save the rook from b2, it's only giving us more tempo. We take rook takes a1, and then white plays g5 to pin our own rook. So that in itself is possible. I don't see anything better actually, so how is bishop g3 not a move? I mean bishop g2, rook e1, rook b7, rook takes. Okay, so rook f2. I wish I could play rook b3 check, which would be really, really nice, but I don't think it's possible here, because the rook is protecting on the second rank, so we have to play just rook f7, keep it simple, and then And then that's it. So queen f2 check looks like a first move. This also looks like one of the positions that I've seen like a million times, but I'm still prone of failing all of these types of positions. So queen f2 check, king g4. Now would you play f5 check? King has to go f5, h5, sorry. We can play then queen f3 check, even if king h6. Queen f2, king g4. h5, king h5, queen f5 check, and next is a checkmate on g5 or g6. So the f pawn is like more invites you to check in with the f pawn, but if you check with the h pawn, the queen is still retaining all of the range. So, and now the pawn on f7 and the knight on e4, they cooperate with the checkmating pattern. So there we go. We couldn't move the knight, by the way, because it was pinned all this time. So rook d2 looks like the beginning of the sequence. Rook d2 check, king e4. And one of the moves that's interesting is rook e7. Queen cannot take for rook e2. And what happens after king d5 is rook e5 check, winning the queen, because the pawn on e5 is pinned and king cannot take because it's protected by the pawn. So rook d2, king e4, rook e7. Now the question is, what happens if the king goes to e5? We might have to f5. We have rook f2, king g4. Rook f4 there. But after king h3, rook e4, that doesn't look very convincing. So rook d2, king e4, rook e7. Doesn't look convincing in all of those lines. So what happens after king f5? Rook f2, king g4, what to do? I need to look without talking too much at the rook d2, rook e7, king f3. King f3, no, king f5. Let's try again. Rook d2, king e4, rook e7, king f5. g6, rook takes... Oh no, g6, he's got king f6. So rook f2, king g4, rook f4, and if king h3, rook e3, and there he's got rook g3. Pawn to f5 doesn't look like a move that solves anything as well. But how about the move? I just found a move that looks strong, very strong. It's a move rook e7, but rook e7, queen to b5 might be the issue. Rook e7, queen takes b5. Rook e7, queen to b5. Doesn't work. So rook to d2 check. King e4. Rook e7 check. King f5. Rook to f2 check. King g4. And then rook to e3. And the threat will be to play f5. And some sort of checkmates. So I feel like this is the best line. And all this calculation, so we don't see the best solution. Or the sort of most challenging solution, to be honest. So how is this not rook takes g2, queen takes g2, king h4 check, queen h3? Okay, that's maybe why. Because once we take on e1, but after queen h3 we need to calculate further. We calculate queen f2 check. If queen goes to g2, then we just take on e1. So it's just about calculating precisely this very line. The queen f2 is the most important, because taking the rook straight away would be tragic for queen c8 checkmate. But here we have that tempo, taking the rook with a check. Just want to check if the chats work. They seem to be working. But they work only once. Okay, 57. Is this some sort of joke? I think this puzzle is a question of people solving very, very quickly and just taking knight takes d7. Whereas the solution is a simple mate in one, no? This is 57? Why can I not take... Oh, I was one move backwards. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Now that makes sense. But still, looks very simple. Looks like bishop f6. If rook f6, rook e8. Bishop f6, rook f6, rook e8. King g7. Not so simple all of a sudden. Bishop f6, rook f6, rook e8. King g7, bishop b7. Two, 4, 5, 2, 4, 6. We're down a piece. Giving the bishop looks unwise. But we are winning a rook for it. Ooh. Getting harder, getting harder. Bishop f6, rook f6, rook e8. Rook f8. Cannot establish anything here. Bishop f6, rook f6, rook takes e8. King h f8. I cannot see anything. But then at the same time, I'm going bishop f6 because that looks like the most sensible line here. But I think I know what's the difference. It's good that I stopped because I'm calculating rook takes e8 all this time, but it doesn't lead to anything because you have rook f8. However, if we take with the queen, we might get a trade on d7 and then win the bishop. So we are down a piece, but once we take on queen d7, then we will be up an exchange. So queen e8 is the key move that I was missing. We trade and we are up an exchange. So the first move was intuitive, but the second move I have not seen. How is c2 not a move? How is c2 not a move? c2 must be the move. That can be the only move. And now we need to calculate. We need to get some water. We are still not anywhere near 60. So we have in total 4 moves: king d6, king d8, king c8, and king b8. I feel that if we play king d8, c8, or b8, might not change anything actually, but I don't know. So we need to calculate all of these options. So king d6. Queen g6 check, king d5, queen f5 check, king e4. Yeah, I don't think going up with the king makes any sense. King d8 also might not make sense in the end because king d8, queen d5, king c8, Then queen e8 check also doesn't seem to be good, so I'll go king b8 and see what happens. And it was wrong. So good. It will be interesting to see what ideas that I have there. But for me, not knowing what idea he had in mind, it was like impossible to calculate that. That's how you fail. That's how I fail. Okay. Rook e1 looks like a no-brainer kind of move. And how about g3 check then? Doesn't look like much of a move, does it? Rook e1, king h2, queen c7 check, g3, h takes g3, king g2. Rook e1, king h2. Problem also is that if we clear out the first or 8 rank in this case, white is having queen d8, b6 combinations, which would end up with us being checkmated or perpetual. So rook e1, king h2. Now we need to calculate g3. If f takes g3, h takes g3, rook takes g3, queen h7, rook h3. Doesn't look like it gives us anything. Rook e1, king h2, queen c7, g3, h takes g3, king g2. Actually, rook e1, king h2, queen takes f2. How does that look? If queen g4, queen g1, h1 is a checkmate. And if queen d8, king a7, and then rook b7, king b7, then white has a perpetual queen d8 and queen d7 check. So there has to be something more checky-like. So rook e1, king h2, queen c7, g3, h takes g3. King g2. king g2, g takes f2, king takes f2 even. I don't see anything without rook e. How about we play g3 first? g3, f takes g3. Rook e1, king h2, h takes g3, king takes g3, queen c7, king f2. Huh. Seems like, I don't know. g3, f takes g3, rook e1, king h2, h takes g3, king takes g3, queen c7, king f2. How about I play rook f1? That's not. If I play h3, g takes h3, rook e1, king g2, g takes h3. Does not seem to be working as well. Rook takes h3, queen d5 doesn't work. If I play queen c7 and g3, queen c7, if they play g3, queen c7, g3, h takes g3, rook takes g3. That could be rook e3 as well, so rook e1, king h2, g3 check, f takes g3, g3, F takes rook g8. How about? I'm starting to see one idea that seemed to be interesting. And that is to play h3. If g3, then we have h3. If g3, then we can play maybe h2. It looks like h3. Nah. I don't know. Couldn't see all the ideas. So today we may not hit the 60s even. What's going on here? So first I would take the knight on b6 if we trade the queens. Oh no, maybe it's actually easier. If I take the queen, knight takes d5, we can queen on b8. If not, then queen d5, cd5, bishop b6, and then queen d5 looks like the move that wants to be played because there would be lots of checks otherwise. Now we take. Now we queen. Okay. Queen h1. King e2. Knight f5 check. King d2. Could be actually bishop e3 as well. Yeah, I think I'm going to fail this one as well. I'm really curious actually what's happening there, but I guess I'm too tired today. It's again 3 a.m. here. I'm losing my plot, but these puzzles became increasingly hard to me. Queen e1 check, king e1 doesn't make no sense. If I play knight f5, then rook g7 is certainly looking bad enough to Queen h1, king e2. That bit is forced. Knight to f5 check, bishop e3. Why not? Something along the lines like rook takes e3. F takes e3, queen to g2. But the king would be running onto... Oh, king has nowhere to run, but no, king e1. There's a queen f2 as well as a defense. Well, guys, I don't know. I don't see the first move. Rook f8. Could rook f8 be moved at some point? Not that I can see. Queen h1, king e2, knight f5, bishop e3. Let's work with this. There's no more checks there. Knight f5, rook g7 is just not working. Queen h1, king e2. What is there next? If knight f5 doesn't work, knight g6 will not... cannot work either, right? Queen h1, king e2, knight f5, rook, bishop e3. Oh, okay, rook e3, f e3, queen g2 check, king e1. Queen g1 check, king d2, queen to e3 check. Still not very clear, but I feel like, yeah, at least I know the first two moves. And rook e3 looks like the move as well here, but let's just double check as well. Rook e3, f e3, queen g2, king e1, queen g1, yeah, I think there might be also some discovery eventually. So queen g2, does that look like a first move? With king e1 surely does. Because king d1, queen g2 will not be the move. kind of move did I have to play? Okay, guys. So today got increasingly difficult, and I didn't see the whole shebang. So the first move was easy to find, but what's the was the idea to go down here? Just okay, so we need to analyze this because I don't understand the differences between the so if we go queen b8, okay, then he's got queen f4 check and queen f8 blocker. Okay, so now at least I understand the ideas. So I need to stay on the light squares. So this was clearly the only move. And now after king b7, if any check, we just simply, even if here queen to d5, I believe the move will be like king a6. King a6 is not the move. Or king a7, because, yeah, there's no more checks afterwards. That makes sense. Because what's the move here? Okay, and from now on, we are unable to stop anything. Yeah, it's just too complicated. How come king b7 is now the drawing thing? If we play rook c6, this is also funny. If you notice, the computer is lying to us here that if rook c6 it says zeros, but once we play it, it says black is winning. That is funny, isn't it? You can trust even the computer. But I'm sure these puzzles are curated, so it actually makes sense that the king c8 would be the right move, and then king b7, and now you just promote, and that's it. So well, that's one puzzle where we learned something, at least I did. Second puzzle that we failed, finding the right idea. Here is impossible. So rook e1, g3 is wrong, h3 is wrong, queen c7 is the right move, take is the right move. What was it? I was saying this. Okay, so I saw this whole line. And here's where I stopped, because after king f2, I don't see what's my moves. Let's say I go that rook h1 move, it's supposed to be the best. And now if I take here, queen h2, queen g2, queen h4, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, how am I supposed to know that this is winning for black? Gee. Okay. Well, what we are going to do actually is just to have a look at this in analysis a little bit more, just so I understand. Rook e8 is equally just as good. Apparently the computer's changing its mind about all this. So let's have a look at queen g4. This one looks more clearer. Because black is at least winning something and continues the attack. Okay, move like rook e8 I can appreciate, because there's this queen h2 check, and we cannot go, or we can go maybe actually, because rook, no, there's rook e2, no? Computer does not want to admit it, but there's rook e2. What was that? There cannot be any fortresses or anything like that. Okay. Okay, so be it. And the last puzzle that we failed. So we saw this, we saw that, we saw this. And now what the hell is the point? So if the could it possibly be knight to g3? Okay. Okay, it's actually knight g3 and then we are winning the queen. Right. Yeah. I guess for this puzzle I was not in the right state of mind anyway. What I was thinking, if we go back to that puzzle again, what I was thinking that here, 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 and after queen g2, which we will analyze. I was thinking he has to play this. If he doesn't play this and plays this, that we are close to mate, even though he can still go here. And if nothing else, we have a draw at knight c2 and so on, but obviously we don't want to draw. So I was thinking he will go something like this. We go here, then there. And eventually I was thinking some like check on f2 or something like that, and discovery on their queen. But this is all far-fetched and everything leads to a draw. Now I was thinking like this. But he's got always king c1 if he need be. And we don't have any discoveries with the knight. So yeah. Today was not meant to be. So hopefully tomorrow. You guys have a good night. And I will see you in the next